Morning. So, in the last class we started talking about career growth and acquisition of skills to help you progress in your career. I mentioned that one of the important resources in industry for you will be a mentor. So, for example, when I joined IBM, I had two mentors, I would say. The hiring manager was somebody who had really great skills for building a team and getting everyone to work with each other. This whole team dynamics was something that he was very good at managing, and I think I took a lot of inspiration from him. But on the technical side, there was another colleague in my department who had a lot of experience and expertise in the area that I was just getting into, which is clean rooms and surface cleaning and all that. And I learned a lot from him, and not just again the technical aspects, but also how to apply those technical skills for solving problems and for advancing the business. In fact, he and I later co-wrote a book on contamination and ESG control in high technology manufacturing. So, it is good to have mentors, and of course, you have to kind of repay the favor eventually. You have to mentor others. Once you have been there for 5 years, 6 years, you should consider yourself to be mentor material and see if you can help juniors the same way that you are helped. So, a mentor is someone who extends guidance to another person through experience by offering advice, building trust, and listening and responding to questions and concerns. It's a lot of responsibility. Being a mentor is not a passive role. You have to take it seriously and put a lot of effort into it, and so does the mentee. The person who is being mentored also has many responsibilities. Unless he openly communicates with the mentor regarding any challenges that he or she faces in the job, or any advancement opportunities they are interested in, the mentor cannot help. So, the trust and openness of communication between the mentor and the mentee is very, very important. So, to be a mentor, you must be willing to spend a lot of time, and also the best way to mentor is by example. If you are trying to advise somebody about how to do their job in a professional manner, and then your own work habits are highly unprofessional, you will not have any credibility. For example, the simplest thing is being on time to meetings. If a meeting is supposed to start at 10, you should be there by 9:59, right? It's easy for you to advise somebody to do that, but then if you are habitually late, how is that person going to take you seriously? And if you lose credibility on one aspect, you will lose credibility on all aspects. So, a mentor has to function like a role model and the only way to mentor is through setting a personal example. What are the benefits of mentorship? Building professional connections, reliable source for a letter of recommendation. Now, that is more of I guess something that is needed in an academic setting, but even in industry you may want to change jobs. Very few people stay with one job all their life. Many people change multiple times. When you do that, it is important to have somebody who can act as a referee for you and can attest to your abilities, your competencies, and your attitude. And the person that you have identified as a mentor is the most logical person to do that. Getting honest feedback about your strengths and areas for improvement. A mentor will not be doing his or her job properly if all they do is praise you and say you are doing great, right? They have to be willing to come out and say you are doing well in these areas, but these are areas in which you need improvement. So, as long as you have found a mentor who is willing to do that for you, then you are fine. But if all the feedback you are getting is either positive or negative, you should probably find another mentor. And by the way, you can have more than one mentor. Like I said, I had two. How to find a mentor? fit. I mean, the person that you are taking on as a mentor should be someone whose I don't know, philosophy kind of agrees with yours. For example, if you say that you want a good work-life balance, so you are not willing to put in more than X number of hours in a week, but then you find a mentor who is a workaholic, and he or she forces you to spend like 60 hours a week on your job, then that's not a good relationship. So make sure that you find a mentor whose attitudes agree with yours. Identify your mentorship needs. You have to be aware of your weaknesses and strengths. Again, there is no point in being mentored in areas that are anyway your strengths. For example, if you are technically very good, then you probably don't need a technical mentor. You have enough book knowledge. But if you have never worked in industry, or you have never worked in a kind of a team or group environment, maybe that's where you need mentorship in. Or if you need help in managing your relationship with your coworkers, that's a kind of input that the suitable mentor can give you. But it's up to you to identify where you need help and then ask the mentor. Selecting people who will be your mentor. So your mentor should certainly be ahead of you in terms of their career. There is something called peer mentoring, which is where you take advice from people who are kind of in the same situation as you are, but that's not obviously as beneficial to you as taking advice or taking mentorship from somebody who has already been there and done that, who have already gone through the problems that you are facing and succeeded in overcoming these challenges. So somebody who is ahead of you a few steps is a good person. And also, if you have a vision for where you want to be in the organization 5 to 10 years from now, then find somebody who is already in that position now and ask them to be your mentor, because they can tell you how they got to be where they are, and all you have to do is follow the same path that they took, and you should wind up taking that job in another 5 to 10 years. In fact, when you meet a mentor, it's not a bad idea to say that your professional objective is to replace them or take that job 5 years from now or 10 years from now. A good mentor will appreciate what that means. It basically means you want to develop all the same skills that your mentor has, so that eventually you become almost like a twin of your mentor. Who can mentor you? Even your family members can mentor you, right? It does not have to be somebody that you pick up only in your professional organization. They can be from your workplace, but not always, not necessarily. And many people use their parents as their mentors, right? Or if you have an elder brother or elder sister who is kind of gone through the same career trajectory as you are going, they make perfect mentors as well. Just the fact that they are related to you does not exclude them from being a potential mentor. Look for inspirational and successful people in your life. I mean, a mentor should have certain qualifications, right? It's actually a big negative step, a backward step, if you wind up being mentored by somebody who is not fit to mentor. So you should be very selective. It's your future, and you are seeking the support of somebody as your mentor. The ball is entirely in your court, and you have to make the right call as to whom you pick up as your mentor. Okay, so let's get back to skills that you need to succeed in industry. There are 12 essential engineering skills that you need to have. The first is problem solving. It's not understanding theory, it's not memorizing and remembering equations. It's the application of knowledge, and again it's translation of knowledge into know-how. How do you take a problem at hand and use all the knowledge you have acquired in your training to solve that problem? I think that was touched upon by the speaker yesterday, where he gave you some examples of where he was able to take book knowledge and actually use it for solving problems that come up. Computer science has become an essential skill. It does not matter what type of engineer you are, or even if you are a doctor, unless you know how to leverage CS to your advantage, you are going to be stuck behind your competitors in the field. Industry skills, certainly your core skills are important. So, you have to again do the homework to identify which of your skills are the ones that are most relevant for the position you are seeking, and make sure that you sharpen them, you refine them, you update them, because things change very rapidly in most fields. So, you may have graduated 2 years ago, but many things would have changed in the last 2 years, and so you have to be constantly updating your knowledge. Pressure management, ability to deliver in difficult situations. I am not sure how much of that you experience in graduate studies or in undergraduate studies, but in industry there will always be pressure. This could be time pressure, which says that not only do you have to develop a solution, but you have to deliver it to me by a certain time. The time pressure is the one that many new entrants to industry find difficult to deal with, and then of course, there is the work pressure. You do have to first come up with a solution before you can implement it. So, even before the time pressure comes in, there is the pressure of execution, and so and situations can become very difficult rapidly. You may think that you have a week to deliver something, all of a sudden something changes and your boss comes and tells you that he needs it by tomorrow. You have to be able to deliver. You cannot say you had told me 1 week, so I cannot give it to you before a week. You just get yourself fired, right. So, the ability to think on your feet, the ability to react to situations is very important. Teamwork, I think this has been said several times. When you work in industry, you are not an individual, you are part of a group, you are simply one component of a larger workforce. So, you have to be able to work with your teammates and succeed as a unit. Even if you are individually performing very well, if it is not leading to success at your team level, then your contribution will not be valued, and again you may be looking for a job elsewhere. So, you have to be able to take your team along with you. If there is a problem and you have found a solution, you have to convince your teammates that this is a solution that will work, and then get all of them to help you in terms of pitching it to management, getting their approval, and eventually implementing it. Creativity, combine prior experiences in new ways to create a solution to the problem. So, creativity is not born out of vacuum. When people talk about invention or innovation or creativity, it is not that all of a sudden something is going to pop into your head. It is a net sum of all your experiences till that point in your life, all your learnings, all your conversations, all the web surfing you have done, whatever it is. It is the accumulation of all that information that you have picked up over your entire life. They have to coalesce into a solution that you provide for a particular problem. And so, this ability to integrate knowledge that you have gained through multiple sources and then apply it practically for a solution to the problem is very important as well. Structural analysis, well, I think this bullet, the sub bullet, I think it's in a very limited context, but you can look at it in a more general context also. Structural analysis can also apply to organizations. You have to, when you join an organization, you have to understand its structure. Every organization will have its own hierarchy. There are no flat organizations, they are all vertical one way or the other. Some are more obviously vertical and some are not so obviously, but they all have a particular structure, they all have a particular order, and you have to be able to work within that structure and succeed. And it's not always easy, because again when you are in academics, it's a very simple structure. There's you and then there's your guide, right. but in industry you can actually have multiple bosses, and you may be working on multiple projects at a time, and each project may have a project manager, and all these project managers will be expecting you to deliver. It is very rare that you get to work on a single project with a single boss. Communication, you may know a lot, but unless you are able to convey this knowledge to the people around you, and this is not just the people working under you, but also the people working with you and the people working above you. For example, you may have come up with a fantastic solution to a problem, but you have to pitch it to your management and get their buy-in. And if you are not able to communicate effectively, both in terms of making a presentation as well as submitting a written report, good ideas may get buried because you are not able to sell them. So, communication is a way of selling yourself, selling your ideas, marketing yourself, marketing your ideas. So, you have to look at it that way, and it is very important that you market your idea, otherwise it is just not going to find a marketplace. Attention to detail. It is very easy to take a very high level view of things, and it's actually, people do not like to get into the nitty gritty, the fine details. They say that the devil is in the details, because the more you dive into the details, the more complex the problem becomes. It is very easy to take a very high level view and say that, I mean, just as an example, if your product is coming out with some defects, you can quickly say this defect seems to be an electrical defect. So, something must have gone wrong with the electrical components in this product. That is a very high level view, but then to actually dive in and find out what the specific problem is and what caused it and what the solution is, and then coming up with a path for implementing the solution, those are the details. And a lot of people like to do this high level view, because it gives them a lot of visibility. Somebody can just look at a problem and say, I think the solution is this, and management likes it because they think you have come up with a solution, but then they do not want to get their hands dirty by actually getting into the details and making it work. That is a thankless job in many ways. The people who do the details work really do not get the credit that they deserve. And so, but on the other hand, eventually there will be a realization in management that this is the person that can actually get it done for me. Okay? It will happen over time. So, you have to kind of position yourself that way. You have to position yourself as a details person who can analyze a problem down to its finest details and deliver a solution. Educational commitment. You have to continue to learn while in the workforce, and it is just not just taking courses, it is not just taking online courses. You should do that. You should continuously upgrade your skills, and you should continuously acquire new skills through education, through training programs and so on. But it is also just learning on the job, observing others, helping others with some things that are not in your scope of responsibility, but you do it just so that you kind of have a better understanding of that part of the business, and that is how you learn. You learn by working with others, supporting others, helping out others as the need comes up, and simultaneously kind of picking their brains. You learn mostly by picking the brains of your colleagues. Data modeling. Again, just like computer skills, you also need data analytics skills these days. You cannot get by without it. There will be a very natural expectation that data is being acquired, data is being stored, but data is useless unless it is made use of. And so the whole data science field is something that applies to every industry, right? I mean, every industry is dependent on collecting data, analyzing the data, and reacting to the data, and eventually doing something proactive so that you do not have to react to data. And all of this requires that you have to be very familiar with data analytics in general. And finally, leadership is another essential skill, and this is again something that pretty much have to learn on the job, because when you are in an academic setting It's rare that you get to develop or display leadership skills. Maybe if you are organizing an event like this Chem Plus that we are doing right now, but event organization, event leadership is very, very different. It's something that you do for a very limited period in a very limited context. So, the fact that you are the convener of a conference in the department says really nothing about your leadership abilities. Leadership is something you demonstrate on a daily basis in your job, and again leadership is not something you do by yelling at others or telling others what to do. Leadership, the only way that leadership works is again if you set yourself up as a benchmark. Whatever you are asking others to do, you better do it yourself first, otherwise do not bother, they will not respect your ask, right, they should not. And so, leadership is something you learn, right. I mean, you will try to lead initially by telling others what to do, but you will soon realize that the only way they listen to you is if you actually do it yourself and set an example for the others. So, the ones who succeed will learn and do it that way, the others will eventually fall by the wayside. Project management is something you will get involved in industry, and so project management especially relies upon your ability to draw upon diverse resources and build them into a strong team with a single objective. So, there will be a budget, there will be deadlines, and there will be a deliverable that you have to meet, but it is not entirely under your control anymore. You not only have to get the others in your department to work with you, but also in many other fields as well. You can certainly get certified in project management, which will not hurt, but just the fact that you have taken and passed a project management exam does not mean that you are ready to do project management. It is something that again you have to learn on the job, initially by being part of a project team and slowly kind of taking over the responsibility of actually forming a project team and managing and directing the project team to accomplish some objective. Six Sigma is a kind of quality training, and quality is certainly something that is important in industry. I think if there is time we will have a separate module on quality control in industry, and certainly if you are in project management, eventually your objective is to produce a product at a sufficient quality level, and quality basically equals customer satisfaction. If your customers are satisfied that you are delivering product of quality, then that is fine, that is the only definition of quality that matters. Your internal definitions of quality are pointless. You can boast that you have a Six Sigma process, but if your customers are not satisfied with your product, it counts for nothing, right. So, all of these things you will learn as you go through this, but you also need these other skills for project management: strategic planning, thinking ahead, risk management, which implies anticipating the risks. You have to be able to take a kind of a worst case scenario and deal with it. Right at the beginning you should say, if everything goes well, I am going to execute this project by this date and deliver this as the outcome. If everything goes wrong, what is my worst case scenario, because that gives you the two bounds, right. If everything goes well, I am going to get everything done here. If nothing goes right, I am going to deliver it over here, and then the actual case is probably going to be somewhere between the two. It is not going to be the best case scenario, hopefully it is not going to be the worst case scenario, but when you do it that way, especially when you do the worst case scenario, you will list all the risks involved in the project and you will put actions against them, right. How do you mitigate each of these risks? So, a lot of it is what I call belts and suspenders. If you don't trust your belt to hold up your pants, you also have suspenders, right. That is actually always important. You should always have a backup strategy. You should always at least not assume, but you should always fear that your primary strategy is going to fail for some reason, something you have not anticipated or something out of your control. You could do the best planning in the world, but there could be a global event that happens that throws your plans out the window, like the pandemic, for example. Then you still have to be able to deal with that situation, and for that you need a backup plan. Leadership, communication, organization, scheduling, quality control, critical thinking. So, critical thinking again is something that says you have to get into the details. If somebody comes to you with an idea, it may look very good on the surface, and your immediate reaction will be, that sounds great, let's do it. Critical thinking implies that you then don't just make an off the cuff decision as to whether something will work or not. Get into the details. Think about all aspects of the plan or idea with a very critical viewpoint, and identify again where the potential flaws are. It's easy to see the strengths of somebody's idea. It's not so easy to see potential pitfalls in what they are proposing, and that requires a very specific skill called critical thinking. What are some other engineering skills that you need? Reading comprehension. Sounds simple, but many people are not able to read a simple report and extract from it what the report is trying to say. I mean, of course, writing the report is also a skill, but supposing it's a well written report and whoever wrote the report has done their job, the reader still has to be able to read and understand. And by the way, it's not managers especially have a problem with this, because management may not have the required technical skills to be able to read a technical report and understand everything, but it may be even something simpler. Even if it's a non-technical report submitted to a non-technical person, they still have to be able to read the document and understand what it's trying to say. Reading a report is just like listening to somebody, except that it's on paper, right? And you don't always get what the other person is trying to say. You hear them, but are you able to absorb what they are saying and make sense out of it? Not always. So, reading comprehension is very similar to listening skills. We all hear what the other person is saying, but do we all try to even understand what the other person is saying? A lot of the time, as the other person is saying something, we are thinking something else, right? And you are kind of trying to impose your own ideas on what the other person is trying to say. So, many people especially who talk a lot, are very, very poor listeners. And similarly, reading comprehension is something, it requires you to kind of submerge your ego to some extent. You cannot read a report with the attitude that I know everything about this subject, I'll see what this person is trying to say, and if it's something that doesn't agree with my understanding of it, I'm going to discard whatever this person is saying. That's not the right way to read a report, just like that's not the right way to listen to a person. Information ordering. There is information overload now, right? I mean, there's information just coming at you from every direction, but you have to be able to make sense out of it. You have to be able to arrange this information in a way where you get maximum benefit from it. Deductive reasoning. I mean, it's almost like you have to learn to be a detective. When you're trying to solve a problem, it's very similar to solving a murder mystery. Just like you have a dead body and you're trying to find out who committed the murder. Here you have a problem, something is not working right, maybe your process is dead and you have to find who killed it. You have to think about it that way. Any skills that you develop in terms of being able to investigate a situation and find root causes will help you in terms of working in industry. Inductive reasoning. Sometimes you may not be able to get the solid evidence that you need, the clues, so to speak, that help you solve the problem. In that case, you have to be able to extract information that is buried and do it in a way, again, where you are not violating logic, you are not violating sense. So, deductive and inductive reasoning are both important in problem solving. Experimentation. you really cannot finally arrive at a solution unless you do some lab trials or some experiments at pilot scale to show that the proposed solution works, right. Before the company will actually put it into production, you will want to see some hard data that says what you are proposing as a solution is going to do the job. But that means you have to be able to design the experiment, and design of experiments is not easy. If you have 5 variables and each one can be tested at 3 different levels, how many trials does that need? If you want to test every variable at every level, it actually goes as 3 to the power 5, right. Obviously, that is not doable in an industry. They'll just throw you out if you say that you want to do 3 to the power 5 trials in order to validate the solution. You have to be able to do design of experiments. There is the fractional factorial design, orthogonal design, there is a Taguchi design. There are many experimental design strategies that you can use to minimize the number of trials you do and maximize the data that you get out of it. So, understanding how to design experiments and extract maximum information from a minimum number of trials is very important. Independent thinking, we talk about mentors, right. One of the big mistakes you can make is just follow the mentor blindly in whatever he or she says. You cannot do that. You have to have the ability to think independently and apply your own knowledge, your own training and your own skills to any problem at hand and come up with your own solution. It is very easy to be influenced by the others. They have been there longer, they will tell you it has already happened before, we know how to do it, right. It is very easy for you to just go along, but if you want to make a mark for yourself, you should say, okay, this may have worked back then, but perhaps there is a better way to do it, right. And so, you have to be able to kind of stand up for yourself and project some of your independent ideas. Determination, again, when you do independent thinking, there is going to be a lot of resistance. Your group is going to say, it is a problem that has already happened, we already have a solution, let us take care of it, let us not waste time. So, not only do you have to have independent thinking, but you have to have the determination to then push your idea through. Not going to be easy. Investigation, of course, we talked about this. You cannot solve a problem unless you have investigated it thoroughly. Again, you cannot just nibble at the outside, nibble at the edges and come up with a solution. You have to be willing to do a deep dive, get to the minutest details and then propose a solution, because otherwise the first time you present this to somebody, they are going to ask a bunch of questions that you are not going to be able to answer, and you are going to look like a fool standing in front of people. So, do remember that especially in industry, the people around you know a lot about what you are doing. In academics, actually you are in a much better position, because if you are doing a thesis, you know more about your area than anyone else. So, you can talk to the audience like they do not know anything and you are kind of telling them what it is, but in industry you do not have that luxury. Everybody knows everything, right, I mean basically. So, you have to be able to somehow convince them. Design. So, design is a principle which says, design is basically the practical implementation of creativity, innovation, inventiveness and so on. There is process design, there is product design, there is experimental design. So, wherever you can contribute originality, it is a design. Okay. So, it has a very broad context, but being able to design is a very important attribute for an engineer. Otherwise, as the speaker yesterday was saying, you just get stuck in operations, right. Maybe you are okay with that, it does lead for a much simpler life, but if you want to do something more than just following somebody else's instructions and doing the same operation over and over, then you have to show that you have design capabilities. Ongoing improvement, this is a Japanese philosophy, right, continuous improvement. They are never satisfied. Even if they have achieved 6 sigma, they will go for 8 sigma next, right. So, this drive towards zero defect, this drive towards continuous improvement, drive towards 100% customer satisfaction, all of this requires that you should never rest on your laurels. You may have launched a great process with 99% yield, but you have to drive for 99.5%. When you get there, you drive for 99.8%. So, that spirit of continuous improvement has to be there. Key performance indicators software. Okay. Compliance, as you do your job in industry, there are many compliance issues you have to be aware of. There are safety compliances, there are environmental compliances, there are I do not know HR compliances. All of this have to be kept in mind, so that unfortunately the solution you come up with may violate one of these compliance requirements. You have to start all over, because the industry cannot afford to overlook any compliance issue, because they will get shut down. Government contracting, dealing with government is a special skill, and it is something I think you do learn when you are in a particularly in like a central government academic institution. There are pluses and minuses. It is not that everything is negative about dealing with government. In many ways they are superior to industry in terms of how they view work, in terms of how they are concerned about impact to society, for example, which industry may not be, because in theory people in government should have a much broader view of the nation. They should be aware of requirements at a much larger level than private industry would be. So, in theory there should be positive as well as negative aspects. The negative aspect is usually bureaucracy, right? Things just do not happen very quickly in government, but there are positive aspects that can counterweigh that. Commercial awareness, again you may know engineering, you may know technology, but do you know the market, do you know the customers, do you know about the commercial potential of your idea? Here I think you have to be willing to say I do not, and be willing to learn. If you come from a purely engineering and technology background, it is very likely that you will not have any idea about commercial awareness. That is fine, as long as you admit it to yourself and learn on the job. Environmental awareness again goes back to compliance. You have to always have sustainability at the back of your mind. Any proposal you come up with had better be green. If it is not green, it is not going to take off anymore. All industries are aware of the need to define and meet sustainability requirements. So, certainly environmental awareness is part of the sustainability issue. Manufacturing, manufacturing is a very different skill from design and development, because manufacturing says you have to be able to translate your idea into a product that is made at very large volumes typically, which is made to satisfy a very wide range of customers. When you do manufacturing, repeatability and reproducibility is very important. Every product that you make should be identical to the previous product that you made. So, consistency in production methods, ability to deal with variabilities, statistical monitoring, statistical analysis, and statistical process control techniques. All of these are important in manufacturing, which you may not be aware of if you work in a development organization. Efficiency, efficiency is something that is drilled into you from day one. Your industry does not want to see you, produce something great, but in a way that does not help them, in a practical sense. So, efficiency, which is kind of the success rate at which you translate ideas into commercial products, and the cost efficiency and time efficiency with which you do that are very important attributes. So, efficiency is not just again meeting time deadlines, but it is also meeting cost deadlines and performance deadlines. Confidence, you have to believe in yourself, right? If you do not believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you, right? So, whenever you go and meet with your group or meet with your boss or meet with people working under you, you have to project that confidence. It's in body language, it's in how you communicate with people, and again it's in how you behave like a role model. If you have confidence in yourself, you will be willing to go out there and be the first person to do something and then say you guys follow this, right? If all you have is book knowledge, you may just prefer to sit at a desk and get other people to do the work for you, you will never develop that confidence in yourself and in your work. That is why it is very important to actually go out on the floor and do the same operations that you are expecting the other people to do. Data analysis we talked about, equipment diagnostics and troubleshooting. Equipment always fails, and if you have the skills to be able to quickly put it back on its feet, you will be highly valued, right. And you cannot just wait for the maintenance engineer to do it, right. You have to be able to have at least the minimum knowledge to keep your process going until someone comes and makes any long term repairs that are needed. So, being familiar with the equipment that is under your control is very important. Inventory management, industries want to minimize inventory. The less inventory they have on their floor, the more efficient their business is. So, just in time manufacturing is the kind of the buzzword. You kind of wait for a customer to ask for something and then you make it and then you sell it, that is the ideal scenario. So, you have zero inventory. Obviously, that is not possible. You always have to have some inventory, but you have to minimize the inventory, but at the same time not risk being able to meet customer needs, right. So, it is a fine balance. You have to have just enough inventory to avoid that risk of not being able to supply your customers, but not any more than the minimum that you need. Inventory is cost in many ways. Statistics, I talked about statistical process analysis, statistical control. You do have to be very familiar. If there is one mathematical subject that you should be very familiar with, I would say it's statistics. That is one skill that is absolutely required in any industry that you work in. So, if you can demonstrate a good grasp of statistical analysis and control of processes, people will be much more willing to listen to you as somebody who knows the practical aspects of running a process and being able to deal with all the inherent variabilities in any process. Okay, so let us stop at that point. In the next lecture, we will talk more about what chemical engineers do in particular. I think what we have talked about so far is something fairly general about any engineer that goes into industry, but there are some very specific needs that chemical engineers have. So, we will try to talk about that in the next class. Any questions? Okay, now I will see you. When is the next class? Monday, right? Monday at 12.